Ladies and gentlemen, in every single sport, we have greats. On this channel, I cover chess, so I can only really talk about the greats of chess. And in chess, so far we've got Magnus Carlsen, 18-time champion of the world, ranked world number 1 for a decade and a half. But the interesting thing about chess is the highest achievable title in the game is Grandmaster. That's the title that Magnus Carlsen has. So what is the difference between an entry-level Grandmaster, somebody who has total and absolute mastery of the game of chess, better than the billions of hobby chess players around the world, and Magnus Carlsen? What is the difference? That's what we're going to get into in today's video. I'm going to show you 3 games that Magnus played actually here in early 2025 in the Norway Team League. He played against 2 people who were just under that Grandmaster level, and then he played against, I believe, his former coach. So a pretty strong Grandmaster. Let's get into it. By the way, if you're a little bit confused where I am, if this is the first video you watch of mine, you might be like, wow, this guy's audio quality is terrible. There's an echo. He's ugly. What's this weird white wall? If you're watching my channel for a long time, you probably have all those same questions. I'm traveling right now. This was the best I could do for today. And if you watch daily, you can kind of keep track of my journey, where I'm recording from. We've got a, joke on this channel that I get kidnapped pretty often. So there you go. On that note, let's jump into some of this analysis. Let's jump into the difference between Magnus Carlsen and a Grandmaster. Now, like I said, 2 people just underneath that Grandmaster level. His first opponent, Isik Alparslan, Turkish player. Then he played a Norwegian player, Christian Holm. And then he played Agdestein, Simon Agdestein. And that's actually Magnus's former coach. So let's kick things off with the game against the young Turkish player. Magnus opened with the English opening. Here nowadays, top-level chess in 2025, it's actually very difficult to get an opening advantage. Players have a lot of memory. They have a lot of resources, so they actually are very, very good with their opening play. And his opponent mimics him. He's like, well, Magnus, if you want to play the English, I will as well. In fact, I will copy all of your moves. In fact, Magnus, I will literally copy the entire position. Now here, black did not run out of time. That was a clock malfunction of some sort. Black copies white the entire distance here. What's funny is, in this game, black plays an opening, which has been proven to be a massive solution to white's setup. You don't have to know this if you're watching this, but at the highest level, the meta strategy of black to mimic white in the queen's pawn game, which is what we see here, is what you are supposed to do. So this clearly shows a player who is not yet at Magnus's level, but has the opening knowledge of a Magnus Carlsen. So how does Magnus Carlsen deal with that? Well, let's see. First, he makes this trade, and he develops the light-squared bishop. The idea is to put a little bit of pressure on the knight and black's king. You can take this knight, you can damage the pawn structure. In the future, you can play moves like knight e5, queen a4, etc. Black defends against that. Magnus castles. And black plays a6, basically saying, look, now you've got to decide what to do with this bishop. Magnus takes. He gives away the light-squared bishop, even though black is not obligated to take with the pawn. That bishop is a little bit passive, and the major question is going to be, what is going to happen with this pawn, right? Is white going to take it? Is black going to take white's pawn? Is black going to advance this pawn? What does Magnus choose for? He ends up taking on c5, and we get to this position. So now there's a couple of ideas in a position like this. Black has what's called an IQP, isolated queen's pawn. White wants to blockade it, probably with b3, bishop b2, or a3, b4, bishop b2, put this knight back around like this. Knight could either jump forward, something along these lines. Let's check it out. There's Magnus playing b3. What does black want? Well, obviously black probably wants to do something a bit better with this bishop. The bishop is kind of ugly, but you can't really go d4. So black is going to c, right? Black castles, Magnus plays bishop b2, and now immediately puts his knight on d4. Now a very, very, very bad trade here for black would be to take the knight, okay? I hope I don't have to explain this to you, because if there's this, of course, white is going to team up with the dark-squared bishop and have a very, very powerful long-term attacking plan. Now, if actually white had to take with the pawn, it wouldn't be the worst trade in the world, but white can take with the queen. So black drops back the bishop, Magnus brings his rook, and Black drops this bishop back as well to get out of the way of the rook, and the bishops are very powerful. Now, how does Magnus take a position like this against a, grandmaster level player? Not quite there yet on a technicality, but how does he do it? First, we drop this knight back to the e2 square. We're obviously trying to rotate it around somewhere I can put a little bit more pressure on the black position. Now let's trade the rooks. This kind of pushes back black, pushes black backwards, pushes black backwards, and now this bishop is a bit passive. The queen is still on the home square. So what do we do here? We actually leave the center of the board and we set up a possibility to take this knight and take this pawn. That is how you put some pressure on the isolated pawn. Black now moves the light squared bishop out very aggressively, calling the bluff. Magnus opts not to go for it. Plays a very interesting idea, queen a1. The computer here liked the concept of taking here and taking on d5, but then black would have centralized his bishops. He would have had the bishop staring down at white's position. And again, that's what the engine would have done if the engine was playing in Magnus's shoes. Magnus opts to play the human approach, which is queen to a1. By the way, if you're confused, this is a battery, and the idea is to put massive pressure on that knight and the diagonal, making it difficult for black to make a move. This is, this forces a response out of black. Now we have rook d1, and it's very clear how every piece in the white position is soon going to have a role in the game. The knight is always active. The knights are jumping into the middle of the board. The rook is pressuring this. Queen and bishop are targeting on this diagonal. But so far, black has not done anything horribly wrong. I mean, he's actually played a very, very nice game. Magnus is going to have to beat this player. He's not just, the person with the black pieces is certainly not just going to fall over and die. And not only that, he begins attacking Magnus. h5, a flank pawn attack. This is like very modern type of chess, using these flank pawns as not just attacking mechanisms, but long-term problems for the position. This is very computer-like. Magnus anticipating this and actually trades. And now the question is, will black get rid of his isolated pawn or activate his knight? He chooses to do this. Now, he doesn't have a weakness. Magnus still asking questions, right? The thing about Magnus is he's going to keep pieces on the board for as long as possible. This is now 28 moves into the game. And even in this position, it's not over. The position's equal. But Magnus will always continue to ask questions, right? I mean, black has overextended a little bit. He's got pawns on e4 and h4, which could be long-term problems. How do you even, what do you do in a position like this, right? So Magnus plays queen c2. Long-term infiltration ideas, maybe centralizing, right? Creating some pressure. Black tries to justify his early offensive game. And in this position, continues with the attack with g5. I'm not sure that's the best approach because now black will have long-term weaknesses near the king. He goes all in now. He begins feeling some of that pressure. Like, what am I supposed to do in a position like this? Pawn goes to g4. Magnus takes the knight, removing stability from the black position. Now he trades like this and just simply puts the knight on the f4 square. Now, what this move has done is prevented the move pawn to h3, disconnected the queen from the defense of the pawn. And there are many questions still remaining in the black position. Black is going to come back and defend himself. Now Magnus, queen and knight riding together. Very nice coordination. Bishop to e5, but Magnus takes the pawn on h4. Black played the move bishop to e5, I guess, with very little time on the clock, 2 seconds. And then here, I guess he got some bonus time back. Obviously, his time went up. That's, from pressing the clock in chess. We go to an endgame, but now let's watch the magic happen, right? In that position, black overextended, Magnus capitalized, defended very nicely. Now, how is he going to convert a pawn-up queen endgame? Fun fact, when you have a queen, just queens and pawns, like 99 times out of 100, the person with more pawns is going to win the game in a king and pawn endgame. So what does Magnus do? Improves the position. Look at this methodical improvement. Everything is locked in now. And in this position, you will dart in with the queen, making sure the black queen cannot check you. You're threatening a queen trade. Yes, you are threatening a queen trade, because even in a position where both queens are made, we have king to f4, and black is simply not going to be able to defend the pawns any longer. Here comes g5. Very nice move. Queen f5 check, and here black resigned. Why did black resign? Well, after a series of checks, what will happen is white will end up, let's say the king goes here, checking and winning the pawn on a6, and after that, white will be 2 pawns up with a passed a pawn with a very powerful king. The only chance you have of defending this position is a perpetual check, and that is not going to happen. Now, that was an excellent game by the player with the black pieces. Excellent. Unfortunately, against Magnus, there is like 5 different phases of the game, and here, was one of those later phases. If black had managed to hold himself together in this position with the long-term pressure, he would have been okay, but it wouldn't have been easy. Magnus would have kept asking questions, kept improving the position, and black, this is a lesson learned. You can't overextend, right? And that's exactly how he got punished. Now, in the next game, Magnus had white, and this time he went e4. By the way, this game, he went c4. It was in English. Here we have a English, but in reverse. We have a reverse Sicilian. Christian Holm, Norwegian player, but that doesn't really, just so you know, by the way, Magnus played that last game 96% accuracy, and this game, Magnus played with 98. So imagine that the Magnus that you just saw in the previous game was a 96% Magnus, missing an opportunity, alleviating a little bit of pressure, allowing the opponent to get an easy game. Now you're going to get a 98% Magnus. Like, what do you do? I mean, what do? You sit down at a tournament, you're freaking playing Magnus Carlsen. Right? Leave. Just leave. Just go for a walk or something around Oslo. Now, here again, like I already said, in modern era of chess, lower rated players, like 2485, don't feel bad if you're not even 485, but lower rated players compared to Magnus have his opening know-how. They know openings at a level that has become unprecedented. So Magnus plays b3. This is called like the Schneider Sicilian. I mean, various b3s. Technically, chess.com calls this the Westerinen. I don't know why. Sounds Finnish? Is that correct? a6, move played by Holm. White obviously trying to play bishop b2 and anticipating that his opponent wants to play here and here. Magnus puts b3 out, but doesn't put his bishop out and wants to put the bishops like this. It's very funny. He spends some time here. He plays b3 and like this, and the opponent plays d5. Magnus trades, plays bishop g2, and kind of a funny moment here. If white gets a few more moves, he's going to castle. Then he's going to play bishop b2 and d4. He's going to get a very easy game. Notice black will probably have an isolated queen's pawn, just like in the previous game. Clearly, Magnus liked that type of a position. But black actually gives this check, and it's not so easy for white to make a move here. White trades the queens. The alternative was to move the king and not be able to castle. Now we have knight c6, knight c3, and the following position. By the way, here, black probably could have traded the queen and left white without the right to castle, but I think he didn't want to do that because then white would have brought his rook and walked the king over there. Right? That's called castling by hand. Now we have knight c6 and we have this position. Now, okay, this is a totally different position than the previous game. In this position, queens got traded very early and the center pawns. Otherwise, both sides have A, B, C, D, F, G, H. Totally symmetric pawn structure as far as like the pawns standing on the board. Bishop to f5 is the move played, attacking this pawn. Now we have c3. That is a weird move, man. I mean, there is a huge hole in the position now. It's going to be, big question, is white going to get the pawn to c4? Where's the bishop going to go? Are you going to put the king the long way? Are you going to put the king the short way? Meanwhile, black hasn't done anything special. He's just developed his knights, developed his bishop. If you're watching this as a beginner, this is the way you really should be playing your chess games. We have castles. Bishop to e7, and now rook e1, ready for e-file pressure. Black quickly castles, and Magnus plays bishop to a3. Okay, putting some pressure here. This is still always on the cards. It's always something that we are considering. Black stabilizes, so far so good, and Magnus plays knight f4. Just, vague pressure toward the center. Pressure on this. His pieces are either looking at the pieces or they're looking at the pawns, right? Like every piece is kind of participating in the game. Another move in the future to consider is knight h4. Bishop d6 is designed to take the knight. You want to take the knight, you want to ruin your opponent's pawn structure, and it's not going to be particularly pretty. Magnus says, okay, there's the move that Levy said in his recap. I don't know how he knew the recap was coming up, before the game was over, but he knew. The bishop comes to e4, now we have f3, just a very weird structure. Like this is not something normal. We got little kind of pawns over here, little pawns over here, The bishop is sliding into the c2 square. Why is it sliding into the c2 square? Because it's not easy to attack, frankly. Like, if you play rook c1, first of all, you're not even threatening to take this because of this. But second of all, I can move the bishop somewhere. And you're not going to be so, it's not going to be easy to take it. I can also take on e1 first, deflect you away, etc. So this is what happens. But now black shows another idea here. Black has another idea here, which is this move g5. Giving away this bishop completely, but counterattacking via a fork. But he backs up. That's not the best move, because now Magnus is able to grab the bishop, and he has 2 bishops versus 1. Now, just like in the previous game, Magnus is going to make one inaccuracy. I'm going to point it out because, again, we're looking at his games via the lens of a computer, so we have to show that. But watch as Magnus beats a 2500 level player, Grandmaster level player. I know his title says I am, but, you know, in chess, you get these things on a technicality. His opponent will be a Grandmaster one day. Likely, he's very, very, very high rated. And if not, then he will just be one of the world's strongest international masters. So Magnus goes knight d3. How do you win a position like this? You both got 7 pawns. What do you have to do? You have to poke at the opponent's position in the right way. All right, so let's watch. f4. Simple. Opening up the light squared bishop, targeting the black center. Black plays rook e2. Magnus defends his pawn. That move is not groundbreaking. Black goes king f8, trying to activate. Magnus goes c4. Poking at this, poking at this, poking at this, right? Now a5. a5 is a very, very convoluted move. But black already was clearly feeling the pressure. There was already no easy moves. You're going to have to lose this pawn and probably jump into the d4 square. Black goes here. Simple idea is that he wants to put the knight on b4. He wants extra stability on that square. Magnus plays pawn takes d5. The knight goes to b4. And now, watch as Magnus figures his way out of this position with a multi-move combination. This was really, really nasty. The computer here really likes taking this knight and wrapping the knight back around. Magnus goes here right away because he didn't want to give up the bishop for the knight just yet. He probably wanted it to be preserved in the long run. But black went knight f takes d5. The better move was to go knight b takes d5. But watch this. Looks like, you know, black has regained everything. Again, if I turn off the bar, you have no idea that it's better for white, right? Watch this. We attack the bishop, right? Immediately punishing black for weakening the light squares. Black goes back. And now watch this move. Bishop takes knight. That knight is under attack, so it's the one that has to move. And we lock the rook in the position, and that's the end of the game. Black played this move to create a little bit of counterplay. The second Magnus raised his fist, like even a hand for a smack, everything fell apart in the black position. It's quite fascinating, and I think black resigned on a few moves later. Yeah, like here black resigned because the rook is hanging, the knight is hanging, and if you move the knight to b4, I'm simply going to take the rook and then take back. So I'll be up a knight. And black resigned because, I mean, he was within his right to play until checkmate, although I don't think, yeah, and I think Magnus would have been able to figure it out. He beats people in equal positions, right? So I'm sure he would be able to do it up a knight. It's just a very clean game. Like, it's so fascinating how from a position like this is the 20th move. It was resignation in 6 turns. 8 turns. It was it was resignation around here already, but just from a position of relative equality. Like, how did that even happen? Well, he just basically attacked and attacked. Maybe b6 was a fatal mistake. b6 was a big destabilization of the position, but even then it was okay. Maybe rook e2 was a little bit too slow. Maybe king f8 was too slow. Maybe what black had to do here is get out and try to just stabilize and sit on the position. And the second that he got his pieces poorly coordinated, here came the roaring attack of all the pieces. And this just kind of shows how good Magnus is at coordinating everything. But okay, how good is Magnus at coordinating? I mean, those were 2470, 2480 rated players just under that Grandmaster level. How does Magnus play against a former 2600 rated player, and I believe one of his coaches, if I'm not mistaken? Let's see, and also let's look at the game from the black perspective. So first things first, how do you even win a game with black in 2025? In your case, in my case, it's actually a lot easier. At the high level, like I've already said, people have opening repertoires that are pretty, like, annoying and solid. And so watch what Magnus does in this game. He plays the Queen's Gambit declined with knight bd7. This is one of my favorites. After takes, and bishop to f4. What I know here is there is a line with the bishop going to b4 and a very quick pressure. You can also play bishop b4 followed by c5. You can play c6. Magnus plays knight b6, which if I check the opening database, yeah, it's like seldom played. And then when white went here, he went knight h5. Nobody has ever played like this. Look at you seeing this above my frame. There are no games with this position found in the database, at least in high-level chess openings. This man played knight b6, and knight h5 targeting the bishop. This is what you have to do in 2025. You need to provoke a fight. I'm not saying go out on the street and provoke a fight. I am saying in a chess game to win as a 28-30 rated player, this is how you have to play the game of chess. You know, you got to give what is a traditional advantage to your opponent. Look at Magnus's early opening. I mean, this is ridiculous. His knight is on the edge of the board over there on h5. Right, he's looking over here because again, what you are seeking desperately is imbalance. You just don't want to make it easy for your opponents to come up with a plan. Right, e3, and now the biggest, right, the funniest moment of the opening. Magnus just waits. It's like, I'm not rushing to take the bishop. That's always going to happen. If the bishop goes to h4, I'm still not really rushing, but I will be able to play g5, and then I'll decide where I'm going to castle my king. Bishop d3, g6. Nice and solid. White is also waiting, by the way. White is waiting, like, is he going to take me and open up my rook? Magnus also waiting. This is very, very funny. Both guys are playing a waiting game. Neither side is committing their king. White continues to play a waiting game, wants to wrap the knight over here because the knight had no future on this side of the board. Bishop takes g6 never works because I will take and very easily protect my king. And now Magnus castles short side, despite pushing all those pawns. And maybe he could have also considered castling this way, but probably White's attack would have been a little bit too powerful. So look, at some point, that knight has to be taken. Knight d7, knight a4. Finally, he's like, this is the only way to make progress in this position. Okay, now what? How are we going to make progress here? First things first, let's back up. Even though we opened up the position for our rook, right, for the opponent's rook and bishop, the opponent has to do something with the rook and the bishop. And right now, that is not that simple. How is the opponent going to do something with the rook and bishop? Okay. Opponent's going to play g4. Logical move, restricting me. I'll play a5. Obviously, long-term idea to then play b5. I'm taking space, and I have long-term attacking prospects. White plays knight c5. Black plays rook b8. This is what I want. And I also want to maybe restrict White from this very easy improving move b4. Agdestein plays bishop e2. Magnus takes on c5. And now d takes c5 is the best move. Opening up the d file for a future rook, securing a lockdown on the b6 square. But I think what Magnus liked about forcing this is the white knight now has no clear plan. Like, at least if the knight had gone to c5, it looks a bit more natural, but that wouldn't have been the best move. This actually is the best move, but it doesn't really matter. Now we are trying to improve our position a little bit. Long castle and let the games begin. This is how you have to win a game of chess at a very, very high level. You have to force your opponent into a fight. You cannot allow an opponent to play easy moves. Everybody's really, really good nowadays. All right? So now what? Now we play f5. We seize the moment. We seize the opportunity to create imbalance. We're pushing pawns in front of our king. We're pushing pawns in the center. We're pushing pawns on the right side of the board, the queen side. Pushing pawns everywhere. Very, very complicated position. Bishop d3 is a great move. Now if I take this pawn, bishop takes g6. Cover is blown. King is busted open. Magnus goes queen c7. Maybe he's going to put his queen in the middle of the board. f4. Not allowing that to happen, but a long-term weakness on e3. Will this game make it to an endgame? That's a whole nother story, right? Will we end up in an endgame where some of these things are going to matter, these long-term moves? Rook h6, simple point, putting pressure on another pawn in black's position, and obviously, you know, you want to double up the rooks. Magnus defense. Agdestein plays rook to h1. Bishop f8, asking the question of what the rook is doing. The rook backs up. Queen e7. It's still a question of like where and how. How are we going to create counter chances? White's attack at some point is going to run into a stall. This almost looks like it. But the thing is, White is actually not finished. Like, White has still some haymakers to throw. And let's not forget, there is the inclusion of the queen. The rare triple battery, Alekhine's gun, 19 points of material barreling down toward your king. You do have to be careful. And there it is. The critical moment of the game, downtime. Right? Magnus before this move, 8 minutes on the clock versus 14, not a clear shot. It's just like in sports. Clutch moment, deep into the game, time is ticking, pressure is on, not clear how you're going to pull it off. Magnus Carlsen sacrifices his center pawn. And you look at this move and you go, what? What is the point? Well, we unclog the arteries. The bishop is alive. The queen is alive. The rook is alive. The pieces need space. Agdestein now has to stabilize the position with 3:55 on the clock. He doesn't. Instead of stabilizing, he says, all right, I'm rolling the dice. Here we go. Queen takes d4. The queen now sees no less than 4 important targets in the white position. Still here, you have to hold your nerves. Pawn takes f5 is the best move. Agdestein finds it. Magnus takes on f5. His king is looking open. So many of us would be scared here, seeing a lot of ghosts. White plays rook d1. He takes his eye off the ball. His pieces were all well positioned. What he should have done here is probably taken a moment to bring back his knight and then kind of seen what was going to happen. White is even, the computer is just recommending, just don't even do anything. Just improve the position of the king from any checks. This is a step in the wrong direction. Magnus, queen e3 check, king b1, and okay, I mean, yeah, putting both rooks there would have been better because now white can play knight b6, preventing the other rook from going there. He doesn't do it, and now we have this. Yeah, the computer wanted rook d7 first, but again, 2 minutes on the clock, 1 minute remaining, pressure is on, and it is clearly black who has won the battle of the attack. Agdestein, whenever you have to remove your rooks from a position like this, like you have to back out of, you know, cave diving, all these videos where they got to go in, and that stuff is terrifying. This stuff is basically what happened. They had to get out. They did get out, but at what cost? And the cost is that just like in any Magnus Carlsen game, everything you do 20 moves prior matters now. Remember how a long time ago I said, what's going to happen if this game makes it into an endgame? Well, is it going to make it into an endgame? Voila. White has weaknesses. So does black, but they are much harder to exploit. This bishop is a beautiful defender and also an attacking piece. The king goes to defend. The pawn falls. Calm defense. Bishop on f8 holding everything together. a4, very nice piece coordination. The rook drops back. It protects everybody. Rook f2, and the bishop comes alive. Right at the final moment, bishop e3 check. We trade, and here comes all of Mr. Endgame himself. Bishop d4, white resigns. White resigns, his knight is stranded on the edge of the board. This is a shining example of why a bishop is better than a knight. The knight is not going to be able to re-enter society. And if knight c3 is played here, you know what's by far the easiest way to win this game for black? You take the knight. It's not always a good decision, but this is hopeless. Why is this hopeless? Yes, the white rook on its own can't stop the pawn, but you cannot stop the king and the pawn. It's just not possible. You can give all the checks you want. I'm going to go here. You're going to go here. I'm going to go here. You're going to go here. I'll go somewhere. King f2, rook h1, rook h7. And that is the end of the game. You never, ever, ever fight back here with white, ever, because your pawns run into mine. You are thoroughly dominated. And that, my friends, is how you control a game of chess against one of the strongest grandmasters in the world. You withstand their play, you see their ideas, you stabilize the position, and when the time is ticking, when the clock is ticking down, and you don't really know, how do you break out of this close position? Clearance sacrifice in the center of the board, the initiative roars in, and suddenly they are backing out of your position, admitting that the counterplay is too strong, and at that point you get into an endgame, and you clinically convert it without any problems. Another game, I believe at 97%, this game was only, 96.5. And that, folks, is how Magnus Carlsen gets it done against grandmasters, slightly under the grandmaster title, but grandmaster level players and very strong experienced players that have been playing chess for much longer than him. It's fascinating that he has the same title. Always love thinking about it that way. But yeah, that is the reality. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I'm traveling. I'm on a travel setup, but I will be back home in a few days. So hopefully, you know, it won't have as much echo anymore. Big things happening in the Gotham household. We'll have some updates for all of you soon. And that's all. If you're new to the channel, we have tons of videos. Go watch Guess the Elo, How to Lose at Chess playlist. And I'll see you next time. Get out of here.